"We don't offer gourmet menus to children," Lana Reed's voice rang out, crisp and public. Xavier Thompson froze. The leather-bound menu slipped from his fingers, landing with a soft thud on the polished armrest. In that instant, every clink of silverware halted. His grandmother's finger hovered over a sleek tablet. On the screen, the words, "Charter 15 Protocol. Stand by," blinked once. VO. Xavier. What do you do when they tell you you don't belong at 35,000 feet? His chest tightened. Soft cabin lights. That faint cedar wood aroma. Even the gentle hum of the engines felt heavier now. Xavier's mind raced back to this morning in Seattle. His freshly pressed Westbrook Academy polo. The sneakers he'd polished until they gleamed. All of it led to this moment. First class, seat 2B, the promise of truffle risotto dancing in his head. He forced his shoulders down, chin high. Eileen Thompson, his grandmother and former FAA commissioner, slid into 2A with a quiet grace that spoke volumes. Even at 72, she moved like a commander surveying her domain. Xavier watched her fold one hand over the tablet, her calm blue eyes never leaving his. Lana Reed stepped forward, crisp navy blazer creaking. She offered a polite nod to every adult, but glanced at Xavier with cool detachment. "Here's a snack box," she said, tapping the plastic wrapper. "Enjoy." Silence swallowed the cabin. Xavier swallowed too, the taste of crushed crackers filling his mouth. He managed a tight, "Thank you," his voice as steady as the seatbelt across his lap. He sat still as the snack box settled, every gaze in first class locked on him. Somewhere behind that composed exterior, anger flickered, but he held it in, because Xavier Thompson knew this was the moment before everything changed. Xavier Thompson sank into his first-class leather seat, trying to steady his breathing. He wasn't just any 13-year-old boy. He was the reigning national robotics champion at Westbrook Academy, a scholarship student driven by one dream: to design machines that change lives. Teachers praised his laser focus and ingenuity. His backpack always bulged with circuit boards and blueprints. Yet none of that mattered now. What mattered was proving he belonged here as much as any CEO. Beside him, Eileen Thompson settled in with effortless grace. Once a commissioner at the Federal Aviation Administration, she'd spent decades quietly shaping America's skies. Now, as chair of the Oversight Board controlling 15 of the nation's busiest airports, she wielded influence few even suspected. Rumor had it she owned a substantial stake, 30%, in AeroLink itself, her investments tucked away in sealed trusts. In the hush of first class, her crisp white blouse and tailored blazer marked her not as a passenger, but as a force. Xavier glanced over at her tablet. The screen locked on flight data and security protocols. A single tap from Eileen could reroute runways or freeze an entire airline's access. Yet she remained calm, offering him a warm, unreadable smile. "Remember," she'd whispered this morning in Seattle, "dignity is your greatest invention." That quiet confidence, so different from the loud bravado of typical power plays, reminded Xavier why he'd never doubt his worth, no matter who tried to diminish him. Ahead, the cabin lights dimmed for takeoff. Xavier closed his eyes and imagined the circuits of his robotics projects lighting up in response to his touch. Airplanes, robotics, even corporate boards. Each system depended on respect and precision. Here, at 35,000 feet, he felt the hum of possibility as strongly as the engine's roar. Little did he know, the next call his grandmother made would transform every protocol they'd ever known. Xavier lifted his chin and cleared his throat, determined to reclaim a sliver of dignity. He'd been silent so far, but he couldn't let Lana Reed's dismissive smirk define his first-class debut. When the senior flight attendant returned with the snack box, he caught her wrist mid-hand-off and gently but firmly said, "Excuse me again. May I please see the full menu?" Lana's smile froze. For a heartbeat, The cabin fell into an awkward hush, punctuated only by the soft hum of the engines. Xavier could feel dozens of eyes on him. A businessman raised an eyebrow. A woman in the aisle peeked over her tablet, and 2 rows back, a young mother lowered her phone as if studying the scene. Lana tilted her head, as if considering whether to indulge a child's request. Then she straightened, her expression steely. "I'm sorry, sir," she repeated, louder this time so that nearby passengers turned fully toward him. "We don't serve gourmet meals to children. This is our standard policy." She tapped the snack box again and started to withdraw. A low murmur rippled through first class. Xavier's stomach clenched. Anger, embarrassment, and a fierce resolve warred inside him. He settled back in his seat but refused to look away. Instead, he stared at his tray of grapes and crackers, tasting the crisp sweetness of each grape as if challenging the injustice. Across from him, Eileen's pale blue eyes stayed locked on Xavier. She gave the slightest nod, a silent message that she saw she cared, and that Xavier's composure mattered. In that moment, he didn't feel small or insignificant. He felt seen. Beneath the hush of whispered gossip and clinking glasses, a new energy sparked in the cabin. Somewhere in the back, a passenger tapped record on a smartphone. Xavier sighed, but only to steady himself. He knew this was far from over. His grandmother's quiet power was poised to strike next, but for now, he would hold his ground, one dignified breath at a time. The hum of the engines felt like a drumbeat in Xavier's ears as Lana Reed clicked back down the aisle, her heels marking each second. He sat rigid, shoulders squared, as she cleared her throat, louder this time. "Sir, our policy stands. First-class meals are for adults only." She slid a laminated policy card across his tray. "We have snack boxes for children. Please enjoy." Her tone was polite, but victory gleamed in her eyes. Around them, passengers shifted uncomfortably. Some smirked. A few exchanged quick whispers. A businessman 2 rows up shook his head, and a young woman tapped her phone screen. Audience, have you ever felt dismissed like Xavier? Drop a yes or no in the comments. Xavier felt every pair of eyes pin him to the seat. His throat tightened, but he remembered his grandmother's voice. Dignity under pressure speaks louder than any protest. He held the silence like armor, refusing to cry out. The cabin lights glinted off silverware, turning each reflection into a spotlight on his shame. Lana lingered long enough to let the tension settle, then pivoted on neatly polished heels and strode away, leaving a wake of hushed murmurs. Someone 2 rows back clicked record on a smartphone. Xavier's heart sank, but he kept his face composed. No tears, no anger. He closed his eyes for a brief second, inhaled, then exhaled in a slow, steady rhythm. When he opened them, he caught his grandmother's unwavering gaze from across the aisle. Eileen's calm expression never wavered. Only a slight tightening at her jaw showed she'd noticed every slight. Xavier's chest ached, but he sat even straighter and unwrapped the cracker packet with deliberate care. Each plastic crackle matched a heartbeat, quiet, resolute. No drama, just a boy teaching a cabin full of adults that respect isn't granted by age. It's earned through grace. If you were in Xavier's seat, what would you have done? Let me know below. A soft murmur rolled through first class as Lana Reed's heels faded down the aisle. Xavier sat motionless, but around him, something shifted. A middle-aged woman in a navy suit leaned across and whispered to her partner. "Can you believe that?" He shot a sympathetic look Xavier's way before tucking his phone away. A few seats ahead, a young service attendant, dressed in the same Aerolink navy, but with kinder eyes, paused beside Xavier's tray. She offered him a small bottle of sparkling water, unasked. Their eyes met for a moment, and she gave the tiniest nod before slipping away. That quiet gesture felt like a warm hand on Xavier's back. Eileen Thompson noticed too. She brushed a fingertip across her tablet screen, where Charter 15 Protocol, ready, glowed in amber. Her fingers hovered, but she waited, patient, precise. The cabin lights refracted off her glasses, turning them into silent lanterns of promise. Kofi, a businessman 2 rows back, reached into his briefcase and pulled out a crisp, white linen napkin. He tapped Xavier's shoulder and bowed his head slightly, offering the napkin without a word. Xavier accepted it, folding the soft cloth into his lap like a talisman. In that muted exchange, Xavier felt something he hadn't in minutes: hope. The cabin wasn't a tribunal of strangers. It was a community with at least a handful of allies. He straightened imperceptibly, exhaling a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He glanced at Eileen, who offered a calm, almost imperceptible smile. For a heartbeat, the weight of humiliation lifted. Xavier reminded himself of the lesson she'd taught him back in Seattle. Even in silence, your dignity speaks volumes. As first class settled into an uneasy quiet, Xavier felt ready. The next move wasn't his, but when it came, he knew he wouldn't face it alone. A soft ping echoed through the cabin as phones awakened one by one. Xavier's gaze drifted to the passenger beside him, a college student scrolling furiously, eyes widening. "It's everywhere," she murmured, tapping her screen. On her phone, a 12-second clip of Lana Reed's dismissal looped with the hashtag "had served with respect" blazing in red. Within seconds, another alert. "Liberty Skyboy, denied first-class meal goes viral." The cabin's low hum shifted to a chorus of notifications. Texts, tweets, news flashes. A businessman 2 rows up leaned forward, screen aglow, murmuring, "That's him. The kid?" Xavier felt his heart pound, but he held himself steady, tracing the edge of his cracker packet. Across the aisle, Eileen's tablet lit up. Lines of code and real-time analytics scrolled by, views climbing into the millions, sentiment overwhelmingly supportive. Her fingers paused over the "Activate" button, eyes locked on the momentum building. Back in the cabin, a young mother tapped her phone and whispered into it, "He didn't deserve that." A flight attendant, one of Lana's junior crew, peeked around the curtain, concern flitting across her features before she masked it with professional calm. Xavier's chest swelled with a complicated mix of nerves and relief. He wasn't alone anymore. Strangers, people he'd never met, were championing his dignity. Even Lana's triumphant smirk had vanished, replaced by uneasy glances at her colleagues' screens. Overhead lights remained soft, but the energy crackled. Conversations flared quietly. Shouldn't they train her better? I can't believe an incident this small could blow up like this. Xavier closed his eyes briefly, inhaling deeply. He pictured his grandmother's calm silhouette at the aisle's edge, poised and unflinching. Word was racing ahead of the plane now across social feeds and news tickers. The seed of the real twist had been planted. This wouldn't end with a snack box. Something far bigger was coming, and Xavier knew the world was about to watch his grandmother's next move. Lana Reed returned with the deliberate stride of someone who knows she's already won. She paused at Xavier's row, the soft overhead lights turning her polished name badge into a tiny halo of authority. "Sir," she announced, voice firm enough to cut through the cabin's silence. "Our policy is clear. Gourmet menus are reserved for adults only. I expect compliance." A ripple of tension swept through first class. Xavier felt his pulse spike, each heartbeat echoing in his ears. He looked at the snack box before him, grapes rolling in their plastic cradle, and fought the urge to hurl it across the cabin. Instead, he took a steadying breath, pressing his palms flat against his lap. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A couple near the window exchanged glances. A businessman tapped furiously at his tablet as if drafting a protest. But no one spoke. Lana's steely gaze swept the cabin, daring anyone to challenge her. She tapped a finger on the laminated policy card again, savoring the power of her little ritual, then turned on her heel and strode away. Behind the curtain, the junior crew swapped uneasy looks. One flight attendant pressed a silent apology to Xavier with her eyes before hurrying past him. The murmur of hushed whispers swelled back to a quiet roar. Phones emerged, screens glowing with comments and shares. Have you ever been silenced by the rules? Drop a yes or no in the comments below. Xavier closed his eyes for a moment, recalling his grandmother's advice. Don't let their noise drown out your own voice. He inhaled the faint aroma of citrus polish and let it ground him. When he opened his eyes, he felt the first flicker of resolve ignite in his chest. Lana's performance had drawn a line in the cabin, between those who bow and those who stand. As the plane drifted toward cruising altitude, Xavier realized he wasn't just a boy with a snack box. He was a symbol of refusal, a spark ready to ignite something far bigger. And somewhere beyond the curtain, Eileen Thompson quietly readied her next move. Eileen Thompson sat forward, her fingers dancing over the tablet like a pianist striking a final chord. Xavier watched the screen flicker through flight logs and corporate memos, each tap revealing a new layer of the plan. At the top, bold letters glowed, "Poison pill activation pending." Below, a pipeline of secure channels cued a formal notice to Aerolink's board of directors. Across the aisle, cabin lights dimmed for beverage service, but Eileen's screen remained bright. Xavier felt a rush of anticipation. This was no impulsive reaction. It was a meticulously crafted strike, decades in the making. She scrolled to a second tab labeled Emergency Civil Rights Mandate, then paused, eyes narrowing. With a single tap, she dispatched it to the Department of Transportation and Department of Justice. Xavier's heart caught. He remembered her briefing that morning. Once that mandate hits, Aerolink's operating certificate would be frozen. No takeoffs, no landings, no appeals. He glanced at her calm profile in the glow of the screen. Even now, she exuded confidence. The steady force behind every late-night hearing and behind closed-doors negotiation he'd heard whispered about in aviation circles. A hush fell over first class as laptops and phones buzzed anew. Travelers leaned in, eyes drifting to Eileen's screen. One passenger, a journalist headed to Miami, murmured into her recorder, "Something big is happening." Xavier straightened. A surge of pride filled him. His grandmother wasn't just avenging his dignity. She was rewriting the rules for every child who ever felt dismissed. He closed his own tablet. He'd been drafting a simple thank you message to her and tucked it away. The engine's steady whir felt charged now, as though the plane itself waited for the fallout. Eileen looked up, her gaze finding Xavier's with a subtle smile. He squeezed her hand under the armrest. No words were needed. Together, they had set the stage. In moments, the world beyond these cabin walls would know that respect isn't given. It's commanded by those brave enough to defend it. In a single tap, everything changed. Eileen Thompson's fingertip brushed the send icon, and the cabin lights flickered as dozens of phones buzzed at once. Seatback screens switched to an emergency bulletin. Aerolink operation suspended. Operating certificate frozen effective immediately. All flights to from 15 major hubs suspended. DOT and DOJ investigation initiated. 500 Malvern funds locked. The overhead PA crackled to life. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the interruption. Due to regulatory action, Aerolink flights are grounded at all 15 designated airports. Please remain seated until further notice. Silence. A glass of champagne trembled in one passenger's hand. A flight attendant paused mid-step, eyes wide as she read the message on her tablet. In the aisles, murmurs rose. They actually did it. The CEO's out. $500 million held? Screens glowed with breaking news tickers. Aerolink board ousts CEO under poison pill clause. Xavier felt his heart pound. Equal parts shock and triumph. He looked at his empty snack box, ripples of power coursing through the cabin. The same adults who had sneered at him now stared at their screens in disbelief. A junior attendant approached him softly and whispered, "Your grandmother is incredible." Xavier simply nodded, cheeks warm. Across the aisle, Eileen's calm gaze met his. Not a hint of triumph played on her lips. Just the steady assurance of someone who knew they'd rewritten the rules. She tucked her tablet away and reached for Xavier's hand, her fingers firm and reassuring. A hush settled as passengers absorbed the moment, their journey paused by a boy's grandmother whose quiet strength had eclipsed the airline's arrogance. Phones emerged again, recording, sharing, tweeting, with respect. Xavier sat still, chest swelling with pride. In that breathless pause, respect had claimed its seat, and injustice lay exposed. The final note came through Eileen's tablet. Initiate takeover. Board control assumed. Xavier exhaled, ready for what came next. The silent revolution was just beginning. The cabin's buzz turned to stunned silence as fresh bulletins scrolled across every seatback screen. Aerolink stock plunges 22%, 20 an daily loss estimated. A flight attendant's tablet chimed urgently. Lana Reed, once the iron-fisted queen of first class, was now being summoned to a makeshift lounge at the front. Xavier watched her blazer's gold stripes tremble as she was handed an official suspension notice. The same passengers who'd sneered at him moments ago now whispered in disbelief. A businessman leaned over and whispered, "That's criminal negligence. She humiliated a child and cost millions." A young couple filmed as Lana's heels carried her out, face pale, uniform cap clutched in her fist. "Can you believe it?" one murmured. Have you ever seen someone pay the price for public shaming? Drop a yes or no below. Meanwhile, the CEO's voice crackled over the PA from the cockpit. "We're grounding all further flights until further notice. Please remain calm." In the galley, junior crew huddled, watching their own phones light up. Aerolink board ousts CEO under poison pill. Emergency civil rights mandate active. Xavier felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. He hadn't wanted anyone to lose their job, but he did want respect. Glancing at his empty snack box, he squeezed Eileen's hand. She offered a small, knowing smile. Down below, cabin crew announced water and blankets, until we receive updated clearance. It felt surreal. A routine flight turned into a front-row seat for corporate collapse. Screens flickered with live coverage, anchors dissecting every misstep, analysts forecasting a long road to recovery. In that moment, Xavier realized this was bigger than him. It was a reckoning for anyone who ever said, "You don't belong." If you believe respect should have no age limit, hit the like button and share your story in the comments. Within hours of the mid-air suspension, screens nationwide glowed with the headline, "Aerolink, grounded by civil rights mandate." On CNN, anchors replayed the 15-second clip of Lana Reed's refusal on an endless loop. MSNBC ran panels dissecting the silent rebellion, led by a 13-year-old and his grandmother. Social feeds exploded with #ServeWithRespect, tweets piling into the millions, Facebook shares topping 75,000, and Instagram stories lit up with user-generated tributes to Xavier's quiet courage. Even travel blogs ran opinion pieces urging airlines to adopt dignity training for every crew member. Back in the cabin, murmurs of solidarity spilled into action. Passengers tapped out messages. "Thank you, Xavier. We stand with you, and teach us to treat everyone with respect." A GoFundMe campaign launched in his name to provide scholarships for underprivileged youth studying STEM, and within a day, it raised over $150,000. Major carriers updated their service manuals overnight. Some airlines even issued apologies on social media, pledging to train our teams to serve every passenger, regardless of age. 2 days later, Xavier and Eileen walked into the grand hall of the International Aviation Forum. The vaulted ceiling arched high above rows of airline executives, regulators, and journalists. A hush fell as Eileen adjusted the microphone stationed at the lectern. Xavier stood beside her in a crisp polo and khakis. No snack box in sight, just a slim robotics notebook clasped in his hand. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing the moment a grandmother and her grandson prepared to redefine an entire industry. Eileen cleared her throat. "Respect isn't earned through policy alone. It's proven through action," she began, her voice steady and warm. She spoke of the poison pill activation, and the emergency civil rights mandate not as power plays, but as measures to protect fundamental dignity. Then she invited Xavier to the stage. He stepped forward, chest swelling with pride, and said simply, "When someone tells you you don't belong, stand tall. Your quiet strength can move mountains." His words echoed in the polished hall, drawing a standing ovation that carried into the corridors beyond. As they descended from the stage, a reporter asked Xavier how he felt. He paused, then smiled. "I felt seen. And now I want every kid, anyone who's ever been told they don't belong, to know they deserve respect." Eileen slipped an arm around his shoulder. Together, they stepped into a wave of applause and flashing lights. That evening, over a shared cup of chamomile tea in their hotel lounge, Xavier looked at his grandmother. "Do you think they'll really change?" he asked softly. Eileen nodded. "They already have in here," she said, tapping her heart. Outside, the hum of the city seemed quieter, charged with a new understanding. Respect demands no age limit, and dignity, once reclaimed, echoes far beyond any single moment. The grand hall fell into a reverent hush as Eileen Thompson stepped to the microphone, her silver hair pulled back in a simple knot, and her tailored blazer unbuttoned at the bottom, for ease of movement. 40 airline CEOs, regulators, and journalists looked on, the arched ceiling echoing with anticipation. At her side, Xavier Thompson sat in the front row, legs crossed, holding his slim robotics notebook like a talisman of everything they'd fought for. Eileen inhaled slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice warm yet firm. "Today we stand at a crossroads in aviation history. We teach children to say please and thank you. We teach them to hold their heads high when they feel small. But until this week, we failed to teach our industry the same lessons." A murmur rippled through the room. Heads nodded, pens poised over notepads. She paused, turning to Xavier. "My grandson reminded us all what dignity truly means." Cameras clicked as Xavier's cheeks flushed. Eileen continued, "From this moment forward, any act of discrimination, be it age, race, or any other factor, is not merely a lapse in service. It is a breach of public trust that will be met with transparent accountability." On a side table, 2 tablets displayed the new global service charter that Eileen was unveiling. Universal menu rights. Every passenger, regardless of age, receives the full first-class menu upon request. Down below, cabin crew announced water and blankets. "Until we receive updated clearance." It felt surreal. A routine flight turned into a front-row seat for corporate collapse. Screens flickered with live coverage. Anchors dissecting every misstep. Analysts forecasting a long road to recovery. In that moment, Xavier realized this was bigger than him. It was a reckoning for anyone who ever said, "You don't belong." If you believe respect should have no age limit, hit the like button and share your story in the comments. Within hours of the mid-air suspension, screens nationwide glowed with the headline, "Aerolink grounded by civil rights mandate." On CNN, anchors replayed the 15-second clip of Lana Reed's refusal on an endless loop. MSNBC ran panels dissecting the silent rebellion, led by a 13-year-old and his grandmother. Social feeds exploded with #serve with respect, tweets piling into the millions, Facebook shares topping 75,000, and Instagram stories lit up with user-generated tributes to Xavier's quiet courage. Even travel blogs ran opinion pieces urging airlines to adopt dignity training for every crew member. Back in the cabin, murmurs of solidarity spilled into action. Passengers tapped out messages. "Thank you, Xavier. We stand with you." And "Teach us to treat everyone with respect." A GoFundMe campaign launched in his name to provide scholarships for underprivileged youth studying STEM, and within a day, it raised over $150,000. Major carriers updated their service manuals overnight. Some airlines even issued apologies on social media, pledging to train our teams to serve every passenger, regardless of age. 2 days later, Xavier and Eileen walked into the grand hall of the International Aviation Forum. The vaulted ceiling arched high above rows of airline executives, regulators, and journalists. A hush fell as Eileen adjusted the microphone stationed at the lectern. Xavier stood beside her in a crisp polo and khakis. No snack box in sight, just a slim robotics notebook clasped in his hand. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing the moment a grandmother and her grandson prepared to redefine an entire industry. Eileen cleared her throat. Respect isn't earned through policy alone. It's proven through action, she began, her voice steady and warm. She spoke of the poison pill activation and the emergency civil rights mandate not as power plays, but as measures to protect fundamental dignity. Then she invited Xavier to the stage. He stepped forward, chest swelling with pride, and said simply, "When someone tells you you don't belong, stand tall. Your quiet strength can move mountains." His words echoed in the polished hall, drawing a standing ovation that carried into the corridors beyond. As they descended from the stage, a reporter asked Xavier how he felt. He paused, then smiled. "I felt seen. And now I want every kid, anyone who's ever been told they don't belong, to know they deserve respect." Eileen slipped an arm around his shoulder. Together, they stepped into a wave of applause and flashing lights. That evening, over a shared cup of chamomile tea in their hotel lounge, Xavier looked at his grandmother. "Do you think they'll really change?" he asked softly. Eileen nodded. "They already have, in here," she said, tapping her heart. Outside, the hum of the city seemed quieter, charged with a new understanding. Respect demands no age limit, and dignity, once reclaimed, echoes far beyond any single moment. The grand hall fell into a reverent hush as Eileen Thompson stepped to the microphone. Her silver hair pulled back in a simple knot, and her tailored blazer unbuttoned at the bottom for ease of movement. 40 airline CEOs, regulators, and journalists looked on, the arched ceiling echoing with anticipation. At her side, Xavier Thompson sat in the front row, legs crossed, holding his slim robotics notebook like a talisman of everything they'd fought for. Eileen inhaled slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice warm yet firm. "Today we stand at a crossroads in aviation history. We teach children to say please and thank you. We teach them to hold their heads high when they feel small. But until this week, we failed to teach our industry the same lessons." A murmur rippled through the room. Heads nodded, pens poised over notepads. She paused, turning to Xavier. "My grandson reminded us all what dignity truly means." Cameras clicked as Xavier's cheeks flushed. Eileen continued, "From this moment forward, any act of discrimination, be it age, race, or any other factor, is not merely a lapse in service. It is a breach of public trust that will be met with transparent accountability." On a side table, 2 tablets displayed the new Global Service Charter that Eileen was unveiling, universal menu rights. Every passenger, regardless of age, receives the full first-class menu upon request. Immediate incident review. Any complaint tagged with #serve with. Respect triggers a 24-hour review by an independent oversight panel. Mandatory dignity training. All crew undergo quarterly sessions on empathy and unconscious bias, led by civil rights experts. She clicked a remote. The screens behind her lit up with the charter's logo, a stylized wing cradling a heart, while the hall erupted in soft applause. "This charter isn't aspirational," she said. "It is binding. Signatories commit in writing to uphold respect as a fundamental right." What rule would you add to the Global Service Charter? Let me know in the comments below. Xavier leaned forward, heart swelling. He remembered the taste of those meager crackers and the sting of Lana Reed's dismissal. Now, the very industry that had nearly broken him was pledging to do better. A tear teased the corner of his eye, but he blinked it away. He was no longer just a boy with a snack box. He was a symbol of change. Eileen wrapped up her speech. Respect is not a privilege reserved for the few. It is the bedrock of service. When you board a plane, you deserve to know you belong. She stepped back, offering Xavier a small nod that said more than words. He rose too, and the standing ovation that followed thundered like a jet taking flight. If you're inspired by Xavier's courage, tap the like button and share this story with someone who needs a reminder that they belong. Later, in a quiet foyer, reporters gathered around Xavier. "How does it feel to be a catalyst for this change?" one asked. He smiled, cheeks still warm. "I feel grateful. Grateful that people saw me, and that they're choosing to see others too." He paused, glancing at his grandmother. "If I could say one thing to every viewer out there, it would be, stand tall and demand the respect you deserve." As Xavier and Eileen made their way to the exit, a hall monitor handed them a letter. 101 carriers had already signed the Global Service Charter, including every major airline in North America and Europe. Xavier's eyes lit up. He tucked the letter into his notebook like a prized blueprint. Tell us, what was the proudest moment you've ever experienced under pressure? Drop your story below. Let's inspire each other. Back home that evening, Xavier opened a video camera on his desk. He spoke softly but clearly. "Hey everyone, I'm Xavier Thompson. This story started with a simple question. Do I belong? It ended with a promise that no one will ever have to ask again." He looked straight into the lens. If you believe respect isn't tied to age or background, hit like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe for more stories of quiet courage. Together, we can make every cabin and every community a place where everyone belongs. He clicked off the camera, folded the robotics notebook, and placed it on his shelf beside his polished sneakers. As lights dimmed in his bedroom, Xavier felt a calm certainty. Change happens when one voice, quiet but unwavering, refuses to be silenced, and that voice can belong to anyone.